All right, y'all. So let's get right into it today. So we are going to practice using an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, a ruler, and a pencil. We're going to practice Chuck Close's process to creating a gridded portrait. So just as a quick debrief, a quick reminder, on Monday, you all got a chance to watch a biography about Chuck Close, learn about his inspiration, and get a little bit of insight on his process. So you all took the first step to creating a gridded portrait on Monday when you found a portrait and placed a grid over it. So really quick, I know I sent out an email, but I got a lot of assignments in where people didn't follow the dimensions that I provided. So it's really important that the dimensions that you use for the portrait and for the grid matches exactly what I provided you. So if you still didn't get the portrait in the right dimensions, please go back and watch the video from Monday and redo that assignment before you attempt today's assignment. And it'll make sense once you understand the process that the dimensions need to be exactly the same. So let's get into what we're doing today. All right, so right here you all are looking at the portrait that I gridded. This is the same grid that you all downloaded from Google Classroom. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how big each of these squares are in this grid so that we can reproduce it onto this sheet of paper. So let's start just by counting the number of squares that go across the page. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 squares going across the page. We know that the sheet of paper is 8.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and convert 8.5 to centimeters, just because that will give us more accuracy when we create the individual squares. So 8.5 inches is approximately 21.5 centimeters. So I'm going to type in these calculations just so you can see how I got to the number that we're going to end up with. You don't have to do these calculations. So if it's 21.5 centimeters across, and there are 6 squares across, I'm going to divide it by 6. And it's telling me that each square is 3.6 centimeters, right? We'll round it. So we're going to do the same for the squares going up the page. So I know that this sheet of paper is 11 inches tall. So that converts to about 28 centimeters. So I'll start with 28 on my calculator. And I'll count the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'll divide this by 8. And that is 3.5. So that's close enough to 3.6. These are almost perfect squares. So now I know that the squares going across the page are each 3.6 centimeters, and the squares going down the page are each 3.5 centimeters. So let's figure out what that means, right? So our job now is to, again, translate this grid that's on my computer screen onto this sheet of paper. So knowing that the squares going across the page are 3.6 centimeters, I'm going to start gridding that out. And knowing that the squares going down the page are 3.5 centimeters, I can start laying that out. And I'll show you guys how to do that. All right. So we're going to work our way across the page, making tick marks that are 3.6 centimeters across from each other. So I made that first tick mark. So I'm going to put the edge of my ruler up against the first tick mark I made. I'm going to go 3.6 and make another little tick mark. And I'll just keep doing that. Make sure that the edge of my ruler is flush against the mark I just made. And then go in 3.6. That's my third tick mark. So remembering that there are 6 squares that go across the page, so I'm looking to make 5 tick marks across the page. So let's do that. Again, my ruler is flush to the edge of that tick mark. going 3.5 and then 3.6. And we'll keep doing that until we have 5 tick marks across the page. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll double check to make sure that this last square is 3.5. It's 3.6 is close enough. A tenth of a centimeter won't throw us off too much. So that is our first set of tick marks going across the page. We're going to create another set of tick marks going across the page up the middle and then up the top of the page. The goal, the point here is to create markers that go up the page that will let me know I'm drawing a straight line up this page. All right, so we're gonna work through this one more time. I'll show you all again the process. So I'll go halfway up the page, make sure that my ruler is flush against the edge of my paper. I'm gonna go 3.6, 3.6, 3.6, again flush to the mark I just made, 3.6, 3.6. That's my second set of tick marks. Right, now you see 2 sets, right? You got my first and my second. I'm going to do a final set just to make sure that my lines are going to be super straight. All right, so now I'm going to use these tick marks that I meticulously made to draw a straight line. So ultimately what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use these as my guides. So I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to line it up to the tick marks. So that one, I can see that I'm off here, so I push my ruler, match it up, draw a straight line. So that's my first line. My second line will follow the next set of tick marks going up the page. Try to get it as perfect as possible. There we go. That's my second line. Right, so I'm just using my tick marks as a guide. Okay. Now just keep working up across the page here, following my tick marks. It's my third, my fourth, and my fifth line. So these are the vertical lines going across the page, creating the 6 3.6 centimeter squares that create this grid. All right, so our next task is to create a set of tick marks that will serve as a guide to create the 8 3.5 centimeter squares that go up and down the page. So we're going to follow exactly the same process that we just did, right? Except I'm going to flip my paper this way, and then make tick marks going. I'm going to make tick marks going up the short edge of the page. All right, so we'll follow the same process here, marking 3.5 across the page. So we're creating tick marks that go up the page this way. All right, so let's start. We can start about right here. In fact, we can cross the marks with a line we made before, going to 3.5. I can move my ruler, but I also know that 3.5 plus 3.5 is 7. 3.5 plus 7 is 10.5. 3.5 plus 10.5 is 14. 14 plus 3.5 is 17.5. 17.5 plus 3.5 is 21. 21 plus 3.5 is 24.5, and that should leave us with a last square that's 3.5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tick marks. That will give us 8 squares. Yep, so let's continue to work across the page. Again, marking 3.5 across, so I'll do that again. 3.5, 7, 10.5, 14, 17.5, 21, 24.5. So now we have these tick marks that go up the short edge of the page. And each of these are 3.5 centimeters across. All right, so now using those tick marks going up the short edge of the page, we're gonna connect those guides that we made, just like we did going the other way. So I'm gonna put my ruler against these guides. I'm gonna draw a straight line. It's my second line. So these tick marks that you all made are going to serve as super important guides to how straight your lines are.
So just work up the page.
Voila! Awesome. So now you have a grid that matches the grid of your portrait that you laid on top of your portrait. So I'll show you what to do next.